This one thing is probably one of the biggest risk factors for men in their 20s in 2024. I think the narrative has changed over the last few years compared to when my parents would have, and my father would have been in his 20s, compared to what the current landscape is and kind of what's the current trajectory of somebody's career. I think a lie has been sold to a lot of men in their 20s, primarily from mainstream education, from secondary school to university. Essentially, it could also be sold to them by their parents, their grandparents, essentially telling them that security is the way forward, that comfort is something to be aimed for, and just because you mightn't do something that would be mainstream, that it's not necessarily frowned upon. There's definitely expectations growing up that, in Ireland anyways, to find a salary based role, to work with the one company for 10 or 20 or 30 years, the one company in the same job, get yourself a nice pension paid by the government, and then retire. Retire in your 50s, retire in your 60s, scrimp and save and put a few €100 away every month or whatever, mortgage a house, stay in the community, work for the public sector, and get your pension, and that's your life essentially, all in the same time as paying your taxes to the government. And I think if you're a young man and you're growing up in Ireland after you kind of graduate secondary school or university, you start looking around. It's like, maybe this isn't the place for me in the future. There's something kind of stagnant about it and something kind of comfortable about it. And this is what I'm going to get into today. That one of the biggest threats to men in their 20s is stagnation. This is a time in which the upper limit should be tested of what's actually capable. Before I get into it, I'm going to talk a bit about my story and what led me here to today. So, if my name is Brian, I assume people who are listening already listen to this. If you're not, welcome, welcome. I am 25 and living in Dubai as a real estate manager. That my word? Residential leasing manager as part of a real estate company. And I was very run of the mill, average kind of grades, and in primary school, a bit above average, nothing special. Same with secondary school. I was a bit of a joker for the first 5 years, not taking anything seriously. It was kind of cool not to really perform. And then in my final year of secondary school, shit started to hit the fan, in a sense of I didn't know what I wanted to do. I would sit down with my guidance counselor and she'd tell me, okay, what are you interested in? These are the things that you should be doing based off your results on this exam. And also, Brian, please don't go to Dublin for university because your poor mum will have to pay for all of you to go to Dublin. I mean, that's a complete side story, but I was taking advice. Young men are assumed to take advice from guidance counsellors who are guidance counsellors because they couldn't fulfill their own dreams, because they chose the secure path, the comfortable path, the path of least resistance. So I decided to follow a pursuit that I was interested in. I remember in final year, I was listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson, some Joe Rogan episodes where he had psychologists on, people like Dr. Gad Saad or Jordan Peterson, or I think Jordan Peterson was the big one when I was kind of 17 or 18. I remember going to a live show of his in Dublin, me 18 years old, thinking I was a big man with my pint of Guinness sitting amongst 30, 40, 50-year-old men by myself in the capital city of Dublin, listening to Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris debate. I always had somewhat of an interest in psychology. It was always something that had interested me, and especially human behavior. So I decided, look, I'm just going to follow my intuition. I'm just going to follow the thing that I'm interested in. I'm just going to pull the thread of the areas that I find interesting, that I find I spend a lot of my time in. Thankfully, my mum didn't really force any courses down my neck, any recommendations based of her previous experience of what is an acceptable or kind of socially acceptable university degree. So thankfully, there was no kind of for stress there. My mum was completely okay with me going to Dublin, and even if the thoughts of me sacrificing what I wanted for her would have been an argument in itself, my mum would have been very of the opinion for me to do or go wherever I want to align with my dreams, and we'll figure it out. We always do. We always figured it out in terms of the financial side of it. So I decided to go to Dublin, studied psychology for 4 years. What I expected versus my reality was completely different. I was in psychology lectures, just completely bored, surrounded by a lot of women, which I'm not saying there's a problem with, but I kind of felt very isolated, and lectures that I didn't really resonate with them. Some of the men were very kind of feminine. The women were very, I'm not sure. There was only a few lectures that I actually thoroughly enjoyed. I think that was to do a lot with the lecturers. And I scraped by, got a 2-1 or whatever that is. In my Leaving Cert, I'd done pretty well. I got a course that I really wanted. And in university, I was kind of left to my own devices. Didn't really study, just enough to get by. Started using Quillbot, which is essentially kind of like ChatGPT, and got enough to pass, just scrape by. Finished university, starting to kind of emerge out into the world. And the lie that I've been sold had started to resonate with me. Okay, what now? What do I do now? Every moment up until this, I had a strict structure set to me by the educational system. From 5 or 6 years old, I was in some sort of education for 9 months of the year, Monday to Friday, all the way from primary, secondary school up until university. At the age of 22, I turned around and not knowing what it was that I had to do next. Kind of ideas of masters floated around my mind, but that was probably because that was the socially acceptable kind of route to take. The ideas of a finance master's also. The reasons as to why I wanted to do that was probably monetary gain, zero interest in the financial system, zero interest in banking, zero knowledge when it came to maths, and it wasn't really my strong suit. So was I a bit confused? Yes. Completely confused. Did I know what I wanted to do? No. So I decided to stay at home for a few months. I decided that I would apply for a few jobs in September 2022 and see what it was that I could get my hands on. Was there any entry-level psychology jobs? Fuck no. None that I was interested in. The idea of a psychology master's, again, wasn't something that I was really keen on the idea of. Studying for a few years to become a master's in, or maybe a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist or whatever that might look like, wasn't really worth it for me. And the financial master's was going to be 18,000 euros, which is 80,000 dirhams per year, which was going to sink me into financial debt. Did that sound appealing? No, that did not. So I decided to go into a sales job. The second I went into the sales job, I really, really fell in love with it. I loved everything about it. I loved the fact that the way in which that I spoke had a effect on the purchasing decisions of people, that buying behavior was adaptable and that you could mold a conversation in a sort of dance to get the outcome that you would like. I wasn't selling things that people didn't want. It was broadband, probably faster and cheaper than some of the stuff they were using. Sometimes slower and more expensive. Did it get sold? Yeah, it did, because I was incentivized to do so. I really excelled in that sales job. Really, really did. It was the first time in which that it was a performance-based role, that I could do better than somebody else just merely by trying harder and learning more and trying new ideas and treating it as a numbers game, that I'm completely zoned in and switched on the second that I'm getting a call or the second I'm reaching out to somebody. I loved it. Leaderboard based. Every single day there was a digital leaderboard, and at the end of the day you could get an idea of where you ranked. And I would not leave that office if I wasn't first. I loved the days in which that I had a bad start. By around 11 or 12 o'clock, people were like, Brian, what's happened today? What's going on? Why aren't you doing well? Like, you'll see. And then by the end of the day, being on the number one spot. I broke records in that company that had been held between the UK and Ireland for years. I'd broken records within the office for the most sales per month. I won incentives for big prizes, and I was there for 3-4 months. Very quickly, I felt stagnant. Very quickly, it felt like I wasn't developing. Very quickly, it felt like I wasn't learning. And this is the trap that young men can fall into. In this period, the acceptable thing for me to do will be to sit back, to bask in the glory of being the top salesperson in a small office in Sligo on the west coast of Ireland, to sit back, get my decent salary plus my commissions each month. The job stayed the same. I wasn't learning more, having the same conversations. I was reading off a script. I wasn't learning about myself. Didn't make sense for me to step into a managerial role because they were making about half what I was making. So I was confused. It would have been easy for me to get complacent. It would have been easy for me to be comfortable. And I felt that. I felt it. I felt after 3 months, I was like, okay, I can actually somewhat understand why people stay in my hometown. I go home, dinner's cooked for me, washing is done. I see the same people. I can expect what the day would look like. I can know what the week will look like. Nothing really changes. The same people come and go. And the place is familiar. Everything is familiar. But the second I felt comfortable, the second I felt complacent, and the second that I felt that I actually could like that level of comfort in my hometown was the second that I knew I had to reverse out of that place completely. That's when I started looking into Dubai, looking into real estate. I was scrolling through jobs in Dublin on Indeed because that's where I thought I wanted to go. And across the screen came Dubai, came real estate. When people ask me, why did you do real estate? I can't lie and say that the reason that I did it is because I had a passion for real estate, or I always wanted to move to Dubai, or it's something that I was burning desire in my heart for years and years and years. It wasn't. It was an impulsive decision based off a job application on Indeed. And it was the right time. This feeling of stagnation, this feeling of comfort, this feeling of complacency, this feeling of routine, regular routine in terms of what my life would look like. I saw it mapped out and I didn't like it. So I thought, this is probably the most deluded thing I've ever seen. There is nobody in Dubai that I know. I have no previous real estate experience. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what Dubai will be like. Completely confused. I made the application, did the interview. Surprise, surprise, I got the job. I mean, if you've got a pulse, you're going to get a job in real estate here. But to me, it was a big deal. I thought it was anyways. And I just interviewed at one company. My recommendation to anybody considering real estate would be to interview at many companies, but I decided to interview at one. So I never kind of have a alternate idea of, oh, what could be if I joined that other company instead of this one. None of that. So I moved. Started doing very well in that company. After a few months, after 9 months, I felt that feeling of stagnation creep up again. I felt that feeling of comfort. When I moved to Dubai, everything was new to me. Everything was fresh. Everything was a learning experience. Nothing I was comfortable with. The job, the amount that I learned in my first 4 months about the job, the industry, myself, my behavior, other people's behavior. I learned finally how to sell. After a year and a half within that first company, the feelings of stagnation started to creep up again, the feelings of complacency and comfort. I could come into the office when I wanted. I could leave the office when I wanted. Nobody would ask. I would be on the top of the leasing board and the leaderboard every month. My best months, I probably did more deals than the rest of the leasing team combined. That's not me gloating, but I what that does for somebody's psychology is definitely complacency. It's definitely a level of comfort. It's definitely a feeling of I don't have a point to prove anymore. These are just the expectations that people hold of me, that I hold of myself. So I had no point to prove. At the beginning, it was a massive point to prove. At that stage, I was definitely in my comfort zone. And what really bugged me was the fact I wasn't learning anymore, that I wasn't progressing. Yes, I could have been progressing financially. Yes, I could move and start doing higher ticket, and I would progress financially. Psychologically, I wasn't. I decided to step into sales. So I was doing leasing and stepped into sales. Started doing relatively well at that and got about 5 sales under my belt. Feeling of kind of comfort and stagnation crept up. Again, comfort. Again, I'm not learning anything. I'm not developing. There's no progress here. Materialistically, maybe. Psychologically or mentally, no. Skills wise, I'd learned all the skills that I needed to learn. I had closed so many deals in leasing and then closed some deals in sales that I had probably seen a lot of the things that would creep up. So there wasn't going to be a lot of situations that were unfamiliar to me. So in April this year, in 2024, I decided to completely move company, to go into a managerial role. Zero previous managerial or leadership experience. Like zero. I went into that because I started feeling that feeling of stagnation again, of the lack of learning, the lack of forward motion, the lack of any sort of momentum whatsoever. I had to make a change. Now, this is my third company in my working career. Of course, I've worked part-time jobs in previous companies. But again, this is breaking the kind of lies that I was told growing up, and never for a split second did I consider that this is something that I shouldn't be doing. It felt right. It felt like progress. It felt like steps forward. It felt like another rung on the ladder, another layer of paint of proof to everybody and to myself. So I took that step forward. I leapt into something that was unknown. I went into uncertainty. I felt the uncertainty and leaned into it. First day, first week was mental. I've spoke about this before. How much I didn't know, how much of a point I had to prove, how much I was public enemy number one for the people who were assigned to be in my team. And that done something for me. That felt like, oh my God, I'm at ground zero again. Nobody knows me. Nobody knows anything that I've done. You couldn't be complacent. You couldn't be any, like, it's not saying that I had kind of low expectations of myself. I definitely had high expectations of myself. In the interview, the recruiter said, "Why do you think you'll be a good leasing manager?" I said, "I don't know. I don't think I'll be a good leasing manager." And she looked at me strangely. I said, "What proof do I have that I'll be a good leasing manager?" I have no proof. So it would be logical for me to say X, Y, and Z is why I'm going to be a good leasing manager. Now, do I think I'll give it everything that I will take? Yes. Because I'm the kind of person that will not stop until I get a job done. I'm the kind of person that can work to the best of my capabilities as hard as possible. And I believe in myself based of the proof that I have that I will give it everything that I got. Will that probably lead into being a good leasing manager? Maybe. But I can't sit here saying I'm going to be a good leasing manager. I can say that I'm going to give it everything that I have. So I leaned into that. And I leaned into that discomfort and the uncertainty. And I started doing well. For the first time, I have relinquished that control of, okay, I'm the sole operator of my performance and my success and my outcome, and helped other people help themselves into performing to high standards on a very one-to-one basis, developing the self, developing the person, not one-to-many, more one-to-one. Let's see if I become complacent after a few months' time. The reason that I'm talking about this is because in your 20s, it's the time in which that you have to take the risks, the time in which that you have to avoid stagnation and comfort. In my 40s or my 50s or whatever, if I'm in a cushy little number of a job and I can get as complacent and it's a 9 to 4 and Monday to Thursday and I can just sit and do whatever I want during it, that's fine. That's fine. But in your 20s, it's the time in which that you need to push the boat out. The time in which that you need to understand who you are and stack as many skills as you possibly can. The time in which you avoid stagnation, the time in which you avoid comfort and you lean into the discomfort and uncertainty. If you're a man and you're listening to this or watching this and you feel comfortable, you feel complacent, you feel that nobody really expects anything of you anymore, for good or for bad. If you've never really done something, you've never really proved a point, you've never really took the path of most resistance and you stayed within your domain of comfort, then maybe it's time to take on some responsibility. Maybe it's time to lean into your discomfort. Maybe it's time to leave wherever it is you are in the world, if that's home, and pursue something a bit more difficult. That's the point in which you'll find yourself. That's the point in which that you'll prove a point to yourself and the rest of the world that you are capable, that you can do whatever it takes, that you will make it work and you will learn on the way. Progression. I think a man in their 20s should have an insatiable appetite for progression. You need to stack skills. This is the period of learning, doubling down. You need to learn how to sell. You need to learn how to lead. You need to learn how to build. I guarantee you when you're in your 30s, it'll be evident that all you've done has been stacking your skills, and the unstoppable force that you will have become will be clear. I guarantee it. I hope it will be that way for myself because I'm living by that philosophy. I've learned how to sell and I continue to learn how to sell. I still sell. I've learned how to lead. Now I just need to learn how to build. When that will come, I'm not sure. But even within the things that you're trying to learn, you learn these things that you haven't even expected to learn. One of my preconceptions was going into a leadership and managerial role. What I'm going to learn is how to lead, how to manage. What does that look like? Yes, I've learned that. Yes, I've learned the kind of the line in which that you have to be strict and comfortable and taken seriously, and how to not be reactive, how to relinquish the control, and when you really want to dive in and just fix everything and allow somebody to help themselves. But the biggest thing that I learned that I didn't think I would learn is spotting talent, is recruitment, is sitting down in an interview across from somebody and getting a vibe of what I could expect from them. My first interview, I remember speaking to the recruiter and be like, how after it, I was like, how do I know if this person is the right fit? How do I know if I want this person? If they would make a good agent in my team? He was like, you'll know. And because I was unsure, I wasn't sure if like how I should feel, if it was whatever, like maybe like this is how it normally feels, like he's done the job for a few months, but he's kind of been suffering in another company, blah, 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 blah. So I started looking out for red flags when the locus of control was external, when people were blaming the company, when there was a lack of emotional intelligence, a lack of adaptability, a lack of interpersonal skills, and somebody isn't presented well. I look out for things on the other side that aren't red flags, is well-spoken, intelligent, eager to learn, willingness to be coachable, a deep sense of motivation, professional, did I say well-spoken, well-dressed, and personable. I didn't expect to learn that. But now I know, when I know it's right, it's right. And when there's no feeling, when I'm unsure, it's a no. I think the whole, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no, that's in recruitment. That's in recruitment. And I felt that a lot. And I've also understood that even in recruitment, even in an interview, there are sales tactics that I would have used previously. Now, these aren't kind of malignant sales tactics. These are just helping someone problem solve to get to the objective. Sell without selling. Don't be obvious with your upselling of the product, in this case, the company. Don't try and close too quickly. Qualify, build rapport, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Be honest, be truthful. Don't ask for the sale. Let them ask for it. So I really enjoy that. I really, really enjoy that. But the whole crux of this thing is you have to think about yourself. You have to be selfish. If you're living at home and you're living with your parents and you feel the reason that you don't want to kind of go out into the world and take on difficult tasks or move across the globe is some sort of guilt of leaving them alone. If you said that to them, I guarantee they would say that this is the reason that we raised you. Every time I feel some sort of a guilt of not being there whilst my mum was getting older, my mum being the only person in our house or whatever, it is that feeling of, yeah, I do feel guilty. But if I was at home, if she knew the reason that I was at home and I decided to move home was to be with her, then she would slap me and be like, Brian, this is why I raised you. This is why I raised you the way I did. I would not be fulfilling my role as a mother if you weren't capable enough to go out into the world and take something of your own. This is clearly the reason. And for me, if when I have my own kids, that's what I'll be recommending. Go out into the world. Leave me. Fly the nest. Take on some responsibility. See what you're capable of. Stack skills upon skills. Find out who you are. Go somewhere where nobody knows you and prove a point and make something of yourself. Then you can always come back. This will always be here for you. That gives me peace of mind when I feel guilty of not being at home. But you have to be selfish. You have to think about yourself. You have to think about your future self and what they would want. What would the character of yourself or the version of yourself in your 60s, what is the path that they would take? What kind of a person would they be? What kind of risks they would take? Then go take them. Go do the thing. Don't sit in your comfort zone. Don't talk about doing the thing. Don't lament about the past, about secondary school or university or time's gone or whatever. Take that step forward. Lean into your comfort zone. Do not be complacent or comfortable. This is where you take the risk. This is where you find out what you're capable of. And I guarantee you that you will find out who you truly are, and you'll find your passion, or you will make your passion. You'll find something that you're good at, and you will become confident along the way. You might not have any reason to be confident, but I guarantee you when you've got enough proof for yourself, you will become confident. So that's what my advice would be to somebody in their 20s. Preferably a man, because I mean, that's who I can speak to. That's what I resonate with, because that's my story and that's what I recommend. So that essentially is why I'm in Dubai. If I'm going to stay in Dubai, who knows? But that is why I am here. And that's so important for men in their 20s. I am so grateful that I leaned into my discomfort and went out of my comfort zone and reached into the unknown. Because the Brian of 2018, the Brian sitting in Jordan Peterson with a pint in my hand, and the Brian 6 years later is worlds apart. Not worlds apart in a positive or negative way, but completely different. Completely different. And I've only got myself to thank for that, which I find difficult because the inner critic sometimes. So that's basically it. If you have listened this far, I really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the follow button on Spotify, and drop the Instagram a follow. And I'll see you in the next one.